Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V-Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue, and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Joining us today will be Clayton Sayfie from the Wolverine ON3. We'll get his thoughts on what's going on with Michigan basketball, and also the busy off-season for Sherrone Moore and his staff. Michigan won another nail-biter on the road against Indiana on Saturday. We gave up a big lead in the second half, again, but played clutch in the final 2 minutes to secure the victory. As frustrating as it can be to watch this team play, we have to remember Dusty May and his team have far exceeded everyone's expectations. With a brutal 8-game stretch ahead of us, this team is still in contention for the Big Ten championship and almost certainly an NCAA bid. It's been fun so far and should be an exciting February and March. Things are somewhat quiet on the football scene. Sherrone and staff spent most of January on the road recruiting, and now they are preparing for spring practice and phase 1 of putting together the pieces for this year's team, and we will have plenty of news on that in the coming weeks. My guest today says buckle up if you're a Michigan basketball fan. It's going to be an intense stretch run with no easy games on the schedule, including 2 matchups in the coming weeks with the Spartans. Up next is Clayton Sayfie from the Wolverine ON3 and the Wolverine magazine. So stay with us. Joining us again today is Clayton Sayfie from the Wolverine magazine and the Wolverine ON3 with a lot to talk about. Great to have you back with us, Clayton.
Great to be here. I'm excited.
Well, let's start with some basketball talk because that's sort of front and center right now. Saturday was another nail-biter on the road at Assembly Hall against Indiana. It was a W, and that's really all that matters. I thought the defense, though, gave us 40 minutes of maybe some of their best basketball this year, didn't they?
I thought so. And it was kind of a continuation from the few nights before against Oregon. I thought the Michigan defended pretty well there, and really the game before that against Rutgers. So that's a welcome sign that they're defending better now. Not great teams. Oregon's taken a step back lately. Indiana, I think everyone at this point knows what their struggles have been. But at the same time, you got to give Michigan credit. And the thing that Dusty May was most proud of after the game was that Indiana's a team that rebounds 33% of their own missed shots. They get offensive rebounds on a third of their misses, and they were only at 22% against Michigan, just 8 offensive rebounds. There were a few of them that were frustrating, but some of them were against Michigan's zone when you're a little out of position. And those are always going to be frustrating, but all you have to do is minimize them. The percentages tell the story. Michigan was able to do that, close out possessions with stops, and get going. I thought early in the game, one of the biggest keys to the offense absolutely cooking was getting stops, getting the rebound, and then being able to play with that tempo. Trey Donaldson was pushing in transition. They were just playing with a really good flow. Obviously got bogged down a little bit in the second half, but you're right, the defense was really encouraging.
Well, Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden were on fire, but Trey Donaldson was the other of the big 3 on Saturday. That's the kind of play Michigan needs on a consistent basis from those big 3 down the stretch, isn't it, Clayton?
Yeah, it is. That was pretty incredible. What was it, 56 of their points came from those 3 guys? Yeah. And then I think in the second half, was it 24 of 27 or 21 of 27 came from those 3?
Yeah.
Came from Vlad Golden and Danny Wolf, just 2 of the 3, because Trey Donaldson had 14 in the first half and then 4 in the second. So, yeah, those are your 3 at this point, right? I think we're late enough in the year where you understand these are the 3 go-to guys. Now, the depth, the rest of the lineup, even the starters, I'm sure we can talk about the change in the starting lineup, and maybe not what you envisioned early in the year, coming into the year. But at the same time, I think a lot of teams out there would kill to have 3 players that are as good as Trey Donaldson, Vlad Golden, and Danny Wolf. And then, to be able to close out games with the plays that they made. Danny Wolf finding Vlad Golden for a dunk, Danny Wolf's and one, the free throws by Danny Wolf. It's been an issue for him throughout the season, and then he's been, really gotten back to form from the free throw line lately. Went 5 of 5 with 4 of them in the last 11 seconds against Indiana. That was huge to see. I mean, those could make or break games in March and send you home, right, if you don't make free throws at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So, those three are playing at a really high level. I mean, Vlad Golden, to me, is better than I even thought. And I had watched a decent amount of him, when they made that tournament run, and then last year, and then going back over the summer, watched some Florida Atlantic. He was very good. But and maybe it helps to play with a little bit more talent. He has been sensational. And then Danny Wolf, I couldn't imagine coming into the year that he would be the guy that he's become in this role as like a primary ball handler creator for them. So those three are great. I think that they got to figure out the rest, right? The drop off when Trey Donaldson's off the floor is pretty steep. It feels like they got to just weather those times. And then there are points when it feels like he wears down a little bit and is tired. I mean, it's nice to have Danny Wolf to be able to run things at times, but you want your point guard to be able to run it. So they got to figure a few things out, but I feel like we're starting to understand what their identity is, who the go-to guys are, what they need to do in the crucial moments. And they're starting to, get it done in those close games when they have to towards the end.
Yeah, and that's key because it's the stretch run now, and we need those big three to show up every night, not just every so often. But the role players need to step it up for this team if they're going to make a run in February and into March. And who do you see maybe some of those role players being?
Well, I think that the change in the starting lineup was really interesting to me. So they went with Reuben Jones, his first time starting when Roddy Gale was available. He started the one time when Roddy Gale missed the game, I believe, at UCLA. The reason being, Dusty May explaining this, that they felt like, okay, Roddy Gale is a guy who is aggressive. He likes to drive the basketball. He's been really good for all his struggles lately at getting to the free throw line. That's been one thing that has been consistent. And, they wanted to put Reuben Jones in there. And the word that he used was connector. Reuben Jones maybe doesn't need the ball in his hands as much, can just kind of, play in the flow of the offense, play off of the big three, so to speak, that we just talked about. And I thought it went pretty well. He played 32 minutes. That is, I believe, a season high for him. Maybe other than that, the game that he started when Gale was out, he didn't do a whole lot. He had a big three in the first half, but I just felt like the crispness of the offense in the first half before Indiana went zone, Michigan kind of slowed things down, was at a really high level, probably due in part to some of the quote-unquote invisible plays that Dusty May talks about, that Reuben Jones made. I think that that's something they're probably going to keep going to, and we'll see how it works out. Small sample size so far, but Roddy Gale, has to step up. It's tough right now when he's made one 3-point shot against a high major opponent since December 7th. I mean, that was a long time ago, and it was the one make came at Purdue when, nothing in that game really mattered. They were pretty much out of it from the final minute on. So they got to figure something out with him. Maybe this switch will, in changing up his role, letting him come off the bench will help. I think Justin Pippen has come along from the backup point guard spot, but like I said, I mean, I don't know about you. I feel like there is just a tough drop off when Trey Donaldson's off the floor. I think we're seeing bits and pieces from Sam Walters and Will Cheddar, right? You can't really rely on those guys on a night-to-night basis, but then it feels like at some point one of them is going to either get hot, like we saw with Cheddar against Oregon or Walters against Rutgers, or just make those one or two plays that you need off the bench, like Sam Walters did get into the bucket, which was surprised a lot of people late in the game against Indiana. So, it's not as deep of a team as I thought it was going to be coming in. So, you just got to hope maybe that you get enough at the right moments from these guys.
Well, all season, I have to say, I've enjoyed watching this team, but I don't know if I have any fingernails left. This team just cannot seem to hold a lead. The last 2 minutes of every game, for the most part, are an adventure, aren't they?
They are. Part of that adventure, like you said, right, is the moments after getting a huge lead and then blowing them. And it's like, it's not just that the other team goes on a run, because you expect that, especially it's the Big Ten. Everyone's got talent. It's, when you're on the road, you're playing in a tough environment, momentum can mount a little bit. It's not just a run, though. It feels like the other team just turns into the better team for like 10 minutes or 8 minutes, whatever it is. And it feels like there's nothing Michigan can do about it. And early in the year, some of those, like the Oklahoma game, led to losses. Arkansas, they were up big, then they were down big, then they came back, made it close, and then lost at the end. So at least they're getting more comfortable playing in some of these close games at the end. I mean, they're 7-4 now, I believe it is, in games decided by 6 points or fewer. Usually those are about coin flips. Maybe the better teams are around 60-65%. Michigan, towards that higher end of it. So I think that's a good sign. But you don't want it to come down to 60-65% when you're the better team, right? So
Right.
They got to figure out a way to hold those leads. I don't know exactly what the formula is. I will say, it's impressive that they've been able to build a lot of these leads in these games. I was looking at it the other day in conference play. Michigan's largest lead is the average of 11 points. So, on an average night, they lead by double digits, win or lose. And that's with the Purdue game where they never won. They never were leading. And then they've led in terms of time with the lead, 27 minutes and 5 seconds on average per Big Ten game. That's also pretty impressive. So there's something there where they have a gear where they're a tough team to play and they are stacking a lot of wins, but they just have to eliminate, every team's going to go on a run against you. Just don't make it an 8-minute stretch where you turn it over and nothing's going.
No, I guess the other thing that sort of drives me nuts is I'm sort of a beeline guy where I like a point guard, a quarterback. I know Donaldson's the point guard, but there are so many times when you get under the 4-minute mark and the 2-minute mark where, okay, you've got the lead. It's not a big lead, but you come down with the shot clock running and someone launches a shot 2-3 seconds into the clock. And you think, why aren't we milking it? So, I mean, I guess my point is, without a true point guard in there, that's one of the things I think that's a problem late in the games, don't you?
Yeah, I thought, especially in the Oregon game, it felt like, and maybe Trey Donaldson got tired, speaking to the point we talked about earlier, where, you got to play him a lot because things, seem to go south offensively when he's off the floor, but then he gets tired a little bit. It felt like he didn't want to come get the basketball, and then you have Danny Wolf running things and some other guys, Roddy Gale was handling the ball, and it'll lead to some turnovers here and there. So you're right. I also think that this is kind of the way Dusty May wants to play, is that you got 3-4 guys that can handle the ball. They can come at you from all angles. He built the roster that way. But at the same time, I agree with you, and especially right for those of us that have been watching Michigan for all these years, on Beeline and even Juwan Howard, it was that way most of the time. The point guard kind of runs the show for him, and you're playing in the half court, and you're getting in the teeth of the defense, and the point guard makes a play, kicks it out, or finds the big guy, or finds a shot for himself. This offense just isn't as much like that. But I agree with you. The early shot clock threes, I get that they want to put up a lot of threes and they want to play with some tempo, but when it's Reuben Jones shooting with 23 seconds on the shot clock, when you have a lead, it just doesn't feel like the smartest play. So, I think that Dusty's even talking. They're still a work in progress. They're still trying to find out what are all the things that they can go to and when they need to. It feels like they got to maybe accelerate things a little bit because it is February, almost mid-February here.
Yeah, I think Dusty's done a great job of utilizing the talent he has at the guard positions. But one thing that I think we've seen this all year, and Dusty has mentioned this, if they could find a way to cut the turnovers, maybe in half, maybe that's really overly optimistic, but this team would be so much tougher to beat, and that hasn't happened. So either it is what it is here in February, or it maybe can still be cleaned up. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, as he keeps saying, right, like it's not for lack of effort. These turnovers, they're working on them constantly. And even against Indiana, right? I mean, I think they had one instance. It feels like this happens once a game to either team. Someone steps on the sideline. They're kind of trying to drive. They catch it on the wing. And then, Namari Burnett just dropped the pass on the wing and it goes out of bounds. I mean, things like that. What do you do? But those are the ones you have to eliminate. Is kind of the sloppy ones. I don't mind the ones when, Danny Wolf is trying to fit a pass into Vlad Golden, as long as it's a smart play and there's a window there. Or, Trey Donaldson's pushing in transition. He's trying to make a play. As long as it doesn't lead to easy points on the other end, I feel like those ones you can live with because of the style of play that this team uses. But it's the sloppy ones that make no sense that, are at the top of the key and it goes for two on the other end that really frustrate you. So, I mean, you said cut in half. I mean, I would settle for, I think they're turning it over on about 20% of their possessions. If they could get to like 17, I mean, even just a few a game that would give you a little more margin for error, that would just be massive for this team. And it's one of those things, right? Like we talked about earlier. I don't know what the exact answer is. Like, I don't know what the answer is for allowing, other teams to get back in the game after you build a big lead. I don't know what the answer is for the turnovers. Maybe it's something you work that happens in the summer. Like John Beeline used to bore some of the veterans in their career when in summer practices and workouts because they're working on catching the ball on 2 feet, pivoting, passing, all that. But maybe it is something that when you reset after the year, and of course you hope it doesn't burn you this season, but when you go into next year, you place a little bit more of an emphasis on it. And look, I think you can going into next season because you have some returning guys back, you have your system in place. It's a little more plug and play than bringing in a whole new roster and coaching staff and trying to figure things out on the fly.
Well, big week coming up. Purdue at home on Tuesday, then down to Columbus next Sunday, and looks like another week of nail biters, Clayton.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be surprised if either game, was a double-digit margin. I guess I think that both will probably be close, and I think Michigan wants a real shot at Purdue after what happened down in West Lafayette. And I love that Michigan posts those videos of Dusty May's post-game speech and the team singing the victors after each win. And when he mentioned Purdue after the Indiana game, he said, "You guys know who's coming in Tuesday night?" And a bunch of guys started saying, "We owe them one. We owe them one." I think this team's motivated to get Purdue. I think it's going to be a pretty good crowd on Tuesday night. At the same time, Purdue's a great team, and they look like they might be kind of a tough matchup for Michigan. I mean, it's hard to even really make, though, what that game was because it went south so early and nothing worked. It's like, was it the turnovers? Was it the rebounding? Was it defense? Felt like Michigan was on skates defensively. I mean, they couldn't make a shot. I don't know. I don't know if it was matchup or what, so I guess I shouldn't say that. But they're going to be a tough out. If they get that win, then you're looking, it's still going to be a tough stretch going forward. But then you're looking at, okay, we can contend to win a Big Ten championship and have a realistic shot of doing that. I believe they'd have sole possession of first place, which would be absolutely massive. And then, like you said, Ohio State's kind of one of those up and down teams, so we'll see. They play a lot better at home. That'll be a challenge, which is even more reason to pocket the win on Tuesday night against Purdue and then take your shot on Sunday. Speaking of big wins, Clayton, on Sunday, Kim Barnes-Arico and her team, 71-61 over the Spartans in East Lansing. They're 17-7 overall, 8-5 in Big Ten play after yesterday. They have to keep this up, but they have put themselves in a pretty good position to make a run at the NCAAs, haven't they? It's great to see. That's a big win on Sunday. And, I think that when you look at this overall, what Kim Barnes-Arico and her staff were able to do this season after losing all the talent in the transfer portal and graduation that they did with some freshmen who are really talented, right? But, to put themselves in this spot is impressive. And, on the men's side, I think of a team like Rutgers that has these young, really talented players, McDonald's All-Americans, but, not quite the veterans you need. And really it's tough to be the leaders of a team as freshmen. And they're not likely a tournament team. I think they're sitting at 500 right now, about 13-13 overall. You go back to Michigan women's basketball, they look like they're in a much better spot with a lot of young talent, which is not easy to do. So, we've seen it throughout the years, right? And on either side, when you have these great freshmen, it doesn't mean you have a great team. It means you can beat anyone and you got maybe the best player on the floor at times. To be able to, stack some of these big wins is huge. Well, let's talk some meat and potatoes, Michigan football. The 2025 recruiting class is a wrap now, ranked around number 6 by most of the major services. Sherrone and staff, I think, exceeded expectations, at least exceeded mine. This is an impressive haul of talent, isn't it, Clayton? I couldn't agree more. I think of what this class was in October. Yeah. And then the way they finished the class, right? It wasn't like they, to be honest, it was a struggle in the early on. And, Sherrone Moore took over in late January. We all know the story there, put together a staff. I think they went a few months. I believe it was it might have been March or April before they got a few commits in the class that weren't already there from when Jim Harbaugh was the head coach. I believe Nate Marshall might have been the first or second commit, and then he ends up decommitting, going to Auburn, and then recommits right before signing day. And he was just one of the big names that they were able to sign late in the cycle. Obviously, everyone knows about Bryce Underwood and that pursuit, but they were able to bring in some more. And then to finish it off with 4-star offensive tackle Ty Haywood, who's a 5-star on one service and spent most of the cycle as a 5-star. on the February signing day was huge as well. So here's the thing, Mike. What positions did Michigan recruit really strong at? Quarterback, offensive line, secondary. Those are about the three toughest, maybe outside of wide receiver, positions to recruit. And in defensive line, you have to throw in there too. Michigan did a pretty good job there, but I would give them an A for quarterback, probably A plus, right? A plus for offensive line, A for defensive back. Those are positions Michigan had to get right in this class, and they did. And now they can build off of it. It looks like they have more resources that they can use going forward. Revenue sharing is likely coming. You feel like they're going to be able to build quite a good roster here for years to come, right? You never know. It's hard to make those statements, but that's the way it's trending, when it wasn't necessarily trending that way maybe a year ago at this time, when they did have to kind of figure out what their plan was going to be.
Yeah, it's amazing to watch the momentum shift on the recruiting trail. 2026 could be another big class. And Sherrone has long been considered a great recruiter. But you add Sean McGee, NIL, and you mentioned revenue sharing, add all of that to the war chest, and the next class might be just as impressive, Clayton. It is fun to watch, isn't it?
It is. And, one of the things you can watch is, I know the dead periods here right now where you can't host recruits, you can't go out and visit them. But in January, and I believe into early February, you fire up Twitter or any social media app, and you see Sherrone Moore. I think he made 50 or 60, maybe more stops at different high schools across the country, trying to build some early momentum. And that's the thing, right? When you do have the NIL resources there, the revenue sharing coming, like we said, okay, Michigan's on an equal playing field, if not a better playing field than a lot of other top programs out there in those key areas that have become the focal point of recruiting, let's be honest. But what can the differentiator be? Sean McGee's talked about it, general manager. It's the culture that Michigan has. What can it be another differentiator in recruiting? The relationships that you build. And Sherrone Moore has become one of these front-facing head coaches on the recruiting trail that wants to get out personally himself. He wants to meet the families, the high school coaches, the players, the brothers, the sisters, aunts and uncles, everybody, the friends, the girlfriends, and whatever it is, right? He wants to meet people. He's a great personality. He connects well with people. And I think that that's going to go a long way for Michigan moving forward. It kind of reminds you, I know rules have changed and all that, but when Jim Harbaugh was climbing trees early on in his tenure, and getting out and sleeping over at recruits' houses and doing whatever he could to land recruits, I feel like Sherrone Moore, within the different rules that are in place now with the scheduling and everything else, and portal being a factor, is like kind of in that mode right now. And I think it could go a long way where a year from now, all things are pretty equal on the NIL front. Well, I got a great relationship with this number, whatever recruit at X position, and Michigan ends up closing on him late as opposed to another school. A lot goes into what college football programs have to do these days, but the one thing that hasn't changed, even though the methods have changed, is that you have to secure top talent. And it looks like Michigan has the ammo to do that.
Well, not a lot of changes on the coaching staff. I mean, there was Chip Lindsey. We'll talk about him in a minute. But two interesting additions in Juan Castillo and former Wolverine Eric Campbell. These hires, they might not move the needle or be sexy for a lot of Michigan fans, but those guys are great football guys, aren't they, Clayton?
I mean, ton of experience. I mean, you add that into Fred Jackson coming back a few years ago and helping with the running backs. And guys like that, though, they don't just help with one position group. It's guys in the building that just know football, that know what it's like to be around a strong culture, to connect with the players. They're kind of the old heads in the room, especially Fred Jackson. You just hear so many good things. But same thing with Soup Campbell. He was pass game coordinator, wide receivers coach at Bowling Green for 6 years. He was at Michigan before that. He comes back. I think he can assist with the wide receivers. Juan Castillo has a bunch of experience as an offensive line coach in both the college and the NFL levels. He's going to help. And I feel like, too, this speaks to something broader, Mike, is that, Sherrone Moore at this time this year, at this time last year, had just gotten the job. The rules had changed where analysts could coach on the field. So you could kind of hire two position coaches for each position. But, it's hard to put that together, right? What is our plan? What's our budget? All this stuff. In year two, I think he knows more after going through it for a season what he wants. And what he wants his program to look like, what he wants the staff to look like, how he wants to split up all the different duties that the coaches have. So bringing in guys to kind of be the assistant exposition coach like they have in the NFL looks like something that Sherrone Moore wants to do. We already know he beefed up the recruiting staff where every assistant coach basically has a recruiting analyst that just works hand in hand with them on contacting recruits, watching film. Here's what you need to do. The organization and the structure of the program looks like it's at a really high level. And sometimes it takes a guy who was in the shoes of an assistant coach, who kind of knows, we were lacking here a little bit. I wish we could have done this better. So then once he gets promoted and then has a year of experience as a head coach under his belt, to understand what he wants to see in the future. So there's no guarantee that it all works, but I think that they have a much better chance of it working with the guys that he's bringing in rather than, not having this beefed up staff that, from before.
Another interesting hire was bringing back Biff Poggi. I mean, you listen to Jim Harbaugh, Minter, McDonald, and all of these guys that were on staff during that great run, and they all talk about Biff Poggi and how important he was to getting the culture where it is at Michigan. And now he's back, associate head coach. I don't know exactly what his job will be, but that is a big hire, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to quantify, what his impact was and what his impact is going to be because it is such a unique position, like you said. But there's no question that anyone you talk to about Biff Poggi loves the guy, and you can talk to a bunch of people from different walks of life about Biff Poggi because he's had such a successful career, not just in football, but in different spheres like building a hedge fund. I believe he got a $25,000 loan to start a hedge fund, and it ended up being worth hundreds of millions of dollars years later.
Yeah.
And then he goes and coaches high school football for Gilman near Baltimore, his alma mater. Turns that program around. I had a coaching class in college, and we read a book where Biff Poggi, it was pretty much about Biff Poggi and his co-head coach and their unique setup, changing, the lives of young people at Gilman. Then he goes to Michigan for a year, and then he goes back to Baltimore to St. Francis, builds that place into a powerhouse program that produced NFL talent, high-level D1 talent like Blake Corum and many others. Then he comes back to Michigan, becomes the head coach of Charlotte. He's back at Michigan now for his third stint. It's been incredible to watch. And when you read about, some of the behind-the-scenes stuff about what his impact was the last time he was at Michigan, talking about the way that he connects with the players, but also helps coach the coaches and be a bridge between the head coach and the assistants, and how there are some times where that staff was maybe doubting itself back in 2021, going into a high pressure season. Maybe there were, a little bit of disconnect with some of the guys that were still there and some of the new coaches coming in. And he helped sort all that out and help that staff come together. I think he's going to be an invaluable resource for Sherrone Moore this time. I mean, those two worked really close together the last time around as well. So they've got a great relationship. I think that they're going to work really well together.
Great to have him back. Well, the one other addition fans are, I think, the most excited about is Chip Lindsey. Had a reputation for being a next-level kind of a mind, a great concept guy. The proof, of course, will be in the pudding come September and in the next few years. But on the face of it, he looks like a mega upgrade for the offense, doesn't he, Clayton?
I think so. And he's got a lot of experience. He's developed different quarterbacks. I mean, he checks like every box that you wanted to check with this hire when you were Sherrone Moore and you were looking at it after you moved on from Kirk Campbell, especially because you do have this, unique talent coming in, just incredible player out of the high school ranks in Bryce Underwood. I think he's going to help develop him, build an offense around the personnel that he has. I still have some concerns about the personnel on offense in the short term. We talked about how they're recruiting well, but next season, lack of depth on the offensive line. You don't have the dynamic playmakers maybe that you thought, especially at receiver. You lose Colson Loveland at tight end, so he won't be as dynamic there. But I feel like you do have to have some confidence that, that Chip Lindsey is going to be able to build things around the guys that he does have. And, let's be honest, the defense should be pretty good as well. That helps the offense. And it felt like by the end of the year last season, Michigan understood what they had on offense, which is not much, and that they had to figure out a formula. Okay, how can we thread a needle here to pick up wins, even against really good teams? And they were able to do that against Ohio State. They blow out Northwestern. They were in the game, a couple weeks before against Indiana. And then you go and do what you do against Ohio State. You do what you do, against Alabama in the bowl game. So I just think that a year of Sherrone Moore as the head coach plus a coordinator with that kind of experience is going to be a big upgrade for Michigan.
Yeah, and as you said, as innovative as Chip Lindsey is, he still needs those horses around him. And this year, heading into spring, you mentioned it, the question marks are, what's going to happen at quarterback? Will the offensive line improve or stabilize? And what can we do with this current group of wideouts? But there's also the spring portal. I know a lot of people are excited about that, but I'm not really sure if you can address those needs in a big way during that portal. Are you?
No, I'm not sure. And that's kind of the scary part of it, right? Is that you just don't know what's going to be there. Of course, there's back channeling and everything else going on in college football right now, but it's hard to know exactly who's going to enter, who's not, what positions, you can get, what positions that you'll probably fall short on, or it might be worth, not even taking a guy, right? Because you do have a limited amount of roster spots now. So that's going to be, could be a little dicey, but at the same time, you look back, Michigan's gotten some really good players in the spring, early summer that have joined the team just a few months before the season and had a big impact. Amir Hall was one of those guys last season, coming from the FCS level. The year before, Josh Wallace. Last year, Dominic Zavada. Year before that, James Turner. So, kicker being a great track record there. A couple of guys that have had huge impact. So there are guys that will be out there. You just don't know exactly who they're going to be. I think offensive line, wide receiver, corner are probably positions that you'd like to address. Maybe punter. So we'll see. But, you're right that you just don't know. That's the uncertainty part of it. At the same time, years ago, if you had a roster at this time of the year, it was pretty much set. There weren't these avenues to add guys like, there's pretty much a free agency now. So it can help you turn things around a little bit quicker if you do find the right guys, if you strike gold.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch because we've seen in the last 3 years, Michigan has picked up some pieces that have really helped the team. So we'll just wait and see. Final question before we let you get away, though, Clayton. The way the season ended, big win over Ohio State and Alabama. A stellar recruiting class led by Bryce Underwood. So Michigan fans are amped up. So what do you think has to be job number one in spring football if they want to get better and maybe, and this might be overly optimistic, compete for a playoff spot?
Yeah. I mean, I think that the first thing is figuring out what your identity is going to be offensively. And, it's just a start, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you do have a lot of time. But I felt like they were just behind the eight ball a little bit on that last season when you look at, how they didn't have a quarterback till just a few days before the start of the season. Jack Tuttle was hurt. Maybe that complicated things. Then you have to make the switch. And, maybe they were a little overconfident about what they had. Finding an identity a little bit earlier with the offense, I think, is going to be crucial. And then, developing that defense, you do have a lot of new pieces. Make sure they get comfortable, familiar with what they need to do as starters now, guys that'll play bigger roles. And then I think everyone's going to be excited to hear about the quarterbacks, right? Maybe make sure there's not too much pressure on him right away. That's why you brought in Mikey Keene, right? A guy that you could be the bridge quarterback, a guy that could start and make sure that Bryce Underwood just develops and gets comfortable. But, at the same time, when it's April, whatever the spring game's going to be, and Bryce Underwood's out there, we're all going to be excited to see what he can bring to the table.
Oh, yeah, that's right around the corner. So before we let you get away, one more thing. What's going on over there at the Wolverine magazine and the Wolverine On3 as far as subscription rates? Because with spring practice coming up, and, well, let's face it, recruiting and football talk never goes away, and you guys are the best at covering all of that. What's going on? Any deals right now?
Yeah, well, appreciate it. Yeah, we got a deal right now. You can use the promo code UM1, UM in the numeral 1, for 2 months of behind the paywall access, message board access for just $1, so 50 cents a month. Great deal. Like you said, there's always something going on, right? The change of the seasons is, okay, it's basketball, spring ball. You'll get the summer workouts, everything, fall camp, before we know it. But so much more in between with recruiting, NIL, transfer portal. So lots to get in on over there. And appreciate you letting me plug it.
No problem. It's part of my everyday existence, checking out the Wolverine On3. You guys do a wonderful job. And for any of my listeners who are not subscribers yet, check it out. Here with us today has been Clayton Sayfie, who does such a great job at the Wolverine magazine and the Wolverine On3. Clayton, always a pleasure to have you join us. You're always so generous with your time, and we look forward to another visit soon.
Of course. I love doing it anytime. Thanks so much.
On Quick Hits today, Dusty May and his guys are 18-5 overall, 10-2 in the Big Ten heading into this week's action. Tuesday night's Purdue game can be seen on Peacock, while Sunday's road action in Columbus will be the national game on CBS. Kim Barnes-Arico and her team are coming off a huge 71-61 win over the Spartans at the Breslin. With the victory, head coach Kim Barnes-Arico has tied John Beilein as the winningest coach in Michigan basketball history, with 278 wins in Ann Arbor. Michigan returns home on Wednesday to host Indiana at 7 p.m. 13th-ranked Michigan hockey dropped a 6-1 decision to second-ranked Michigan State on Saturday night in their annual Duel in the D at Little Caesars Arena. This weekend, Minnesota visits for a weekend set. Friday night's game can be seen on Big Ten Plus, while Saturday night's matchup will be televised by the Big Ten Network. Michigan is 16-12-2 overall, 10-9-1 in Big Ten play. Softball opened the season at the USF Rawlings Invitational over the weekend and came away with a 2-3 record. They will travel to Athens, Georgia next weekend for a 4-game set at the Red and Black Showcase. U of M will open play with a 6 p.m. game against Georgia on Thursday. They will close out the weekend with a road game against Georgia State at noon on Sunday in Atlanta. Baseball opens this weekend in Puerto Rico. On Friday, they'll be up against number 2 Virginia. On Saturday, they play Rice, Villanova on Sunday, and Stetson Monday afternoon. That does it for now. A reminder to like us on Facebook and give us a follow on Twitter. I'd also appreciate your comments or ratings wherever you get your podcasts. So thanks for listening, and we hope you'll come back next time. Have a great Wolverine week, everyone. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Until we meet again, take care, and as always, go blue. Thanks for joining us today on The Michigan Man, here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or email us at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!